What's up, everyone? I would say sports fans usually, and if you're a sports fan and you're watching this, that's cool because not everybody necessarily is going to be an American who watches this, but everyone everywhere is going to be subject to the politics that goes on where you stay. I just wanted to watch this because it's of interest to me. I wanted to just share my thoughts. I don't usually share my opinions in terms of my everyday life, usually because I have such strong opinions. It can turn into a debate that goes on for a while. I've learned a while ago to not let the emotions get the better of me. I transfer that over to my sports takes and opinions that I share. I feel, for the most part, whenever you do, when I say you, I mean anyone, whenever one does have a discussion where there is a hot debate on one or more different views that are usually opposing each other, for all that each individual believes in what they say, I can truly say that I have never, ever, ever seen anyone say, you know what, at the beginning of this conversation, I thought this, now I think that. I've never seen it happen. I'm not saying it hasn't, I just never seen it. About the only time you ever come close to that is if you're arguing over past history in terms of what happened. Did this team win? Did that team win? Did this issue get voted? Was it about this? Was this issue about that? Something that can be concretely decided by checking history to see what was recorded. And that's the only time I've ever seen anybody change their position. But in terms of a philosophy of this is how I think this should be done, this is how I think this team should go about, this is the player I think is better than that player, things like that, I've never seen anyone change their mind. So I'm thinking to myself, why am I going to be bothered to get worked up full of emotion when I can just state my case, try to be intellectual about it as possible. You want to at least I do. I want to speak from more than just, I want this because I want this. This guy's better because I say this guy's better because it's I mean, if it has value to yourself, that's pretty much all it ever really needs to have. But if all it really never needs to have is just value to yourself, why do you even bother to share it with somebody else in the first place? I mean, are you trying to change that person's mind, or are you just trying to say what you think and you don't care if you change that person's mind? That's going to be probably different for each individual. But not getting off the track too far. Just this is the sixth and the final clip of the first day's testimony and the proceedings of the hearing itself. I wanted to thank one more time MSNBC for the video feed I'm showing to you all, trying to find at least a broadcast that did not have too much of a slant towards the liberal or the conservative side. Hopefully that comes across. I'm not sure if it does. I know oftentimes we're guilty of seeing what we want to see and hearing what we want to hear, but I tried to at least try to present as close to the middle of the road as possible. I'll be back at the end to share some brief thoughts. I know this has been like a long set of clips. I tried to break it up best I could so that there are smaller portions, but I'll try to just make a few quick and brief comments on the end to what I think about the Michael Cohen himself, the members of the committee, and how that dynamic all played out on the screen. So without any more delay, I'm going to go ahead and show the last clip now.
Where are we? Ms. Ocasio-Cortez.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Cohen, I'd like to quickly pick up on some previous lines of questioning before getting into my own, so I may go a little quickly to get it all in 5 minutes. First, my colleague from Vermont had asked you several questions about AMI, the parent company of the National Enquirer, and in that you mentioned a treasure trove, a quote, treasure trove of documents in David Pecker's office relating to information assembled from all these catch and kill operations against people people who potentially had damaging information on the president. You also mentioned that the president was very concerned about the whereabouts of these documents and who possessed them. Does that treasure trove of documents still exist?
I don't know. I had asked David Pecker for them.
So you would say the person who knows the whereabouts of these documents would be David Pecker?
David Pecker, Barry Levine, or Dylan Howard.
Okay, thank you. Secondly, I want to ask a little bit about your conversation with my colleague from Missouri about asset inflation. To your knowledge, did the president ever provide inflated assets to an insurance company?
Yes.
Who else knows that the president did this?
Alan Weisselberg, Ron Liebman, and Matthew Calamari.
And where would the committee find more information on this? Do you think we need to review his financial statements and his tax returns in order to compare them?
Yes, and you'd find it at the Trump org.
Thank you very much. The last thing here, the Trump Golf Organization currently has a golf course in my home borough of the Bronx, Trump Links. I drive past it every day, going between the Bronx and Queens. In fact, the Washington Post reported on the Trump Links Bronx course in an article entitled "Taxpayers Built This New York Golf Course and Trump Reaps the Rewards." That article is where many New Yorkers and people in the country learned that taxpayers spent $127 million to build Trump Links in a, quote, generous deal, allowing President Trump to keep almost every dollar that flows in on a golf course built with public funds. And this doesn't seem to be the only time the president has benefited at the expense of the public. Mr. Cohen, I want to ask you about your assertion that the president may have improperly devalued his assets to avoid paying taxes. According to an August 21st, 2016 report by the Washington Post, while the president claimed in financial disclosure forms that Trump National Golf Club in Jupiter, Florida, was worth more than $50 million, he had reported otherwise to local tax authorities that the course was worth, quote, no more than $5 million. Mr. Cohen, do you know whether this specific report is accurate?
It's identical to what he did at Trump National Golf Club at Briarcliff Manor.
Do you know, to your knowledge, was the president interested in reducing his local real estate bills, tax bills?
Yes.
And how did he do that?
What you do is you deflate the value of the asset, and then you put in a request to the tax department for a deduction.
Thank you. Now, in October 2018, the New York Times revealed that, quote, President Trump participated in dubious tax schemes during the 1990s, including instances of outright fraud that greatly increased the fortune he received from his parents. It further stated from Mr. Trump, quote, he also helped formulate a strategy to undervalue his parents' real estate holdings by hundreds of millions of dollars on tax returns, sharply reducing his tax bill when those properties were transferred to him and his siblings. Mr. Cohen, do you know whether that specific report is accurate?
I don't. I wasn't there in 1990s.
Who would know the answer to those questions?
Alan Weisselberg.
And would it help for the committee to obtain federal and state tax returns from the president and his company to address that discrepancy?
I believe so.
Thank you very much. I yield the rest of my time to the chair.
Ms. Presley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. One more time, Mr. Chairman, I just want to thank you for your leadership and the way in which you comport yourself. And I know there are some that would have you believe that the more you say something, the more true it is. But in fact, this committee, thanks to your leadership and our Democratic majority, has been doing the work of the American people. Before this committee alone, we looked at the issue of making Election Day a federal holiday, reducing drug pricing, and pursued subpoenas to reunite families. And just recently, before we returned here, tried to pass a universal background check gun bill. So we are doing the business of the American people, including today. It has been said that the best sunlight is said to be the best of disinfectants. Electric light is the most efficient policeman. We'll let there be light. Because the point of oversight is for us to pursue the trust, to pursue the truth and justice for the American people, to understand if lies, deceit, and corruption are threatening American democracy and indeed our safety. Mr. Chairman, charities should not be abused as personal piggy banks. It is both against the law and extremely unfair to charities that play by the rules. A line of questioning that we have not yet addressed, and we've been glaringly absent in tackling, is that of the abuses of the Trump Foundation. Now, the President's Charitable Foundation agreed to dissolve in response to an ongoing investigation and lawsuit by the New York Attorney General. The New York Attorney General found what it called, quote, clear and repeated violations of state and federal law, including, quote, repeated and willful self-dealing by the Trump administration. Apologies, by the foundation. If I understand your opening statement correctly, in mid-2013, you arranged for a straw purchaser to bid $60,000 for a portrait of Mr. Trump painted by the artist William Quigley at a charity auction. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Why would the president want to bid up the price of something that he was ultimately paying for?
It's all about ego.
How was it paid for?
I believe it was paid for by a check from the trust.
And abuse, and again, this is not a partisan pursuit here. I think ultimately we're demonstrating is patriotism. This is about what is right and just for the American people. Did the straw purchaser purchase the painting and then the foundation funds reimburse the straw purchaser? Can you explain the mechanics of that payment?
I'm not involved with the foundation.
Okay. Did the president know what was happening?
Oh, yes.
And how did you know he knew what was happening?
Because he tasked me to find the straw bidder to ensure that his painting, which was going last in the auction, would go for the highest amount of any of the paintings that have been put on the auction block for the day.
And what happened to the painting?
I believe it's in one of the clubs.
Okay. According to the New York Attorney General in March 2014, Mr. Trump again used the foundation to pay $10,000 for the winning bid on another portrait of Mr. Trump that ended up as decor on one of his golf courses in Miami. Mr. Cohen, are you familiar with that transaction?
Yes.
Are you aware of any other instances where the Trump Foundation was used to benefit the Trump family?
Yes.
Could you elaborate?
So there was a contract that I ended up creating on Mr. Trump's behalf for, he was a Ukrainian oligarch by the name of Viktor Pinchuk. And it was that Mr. Trump was asked to come and to participate in what was the Ukrainian American Economic Forum. Unfortunately, he wasn't able to go, but I was able to negotiate 15 minutes by Skype where they would have a camera very much like television camera, very much like that one. And they would translate Mr. Trump to the questioner, and then he would respond back. And I negotiated a fee of $150,000 for 15 minutes. I was directed by Mr. Trump to have the contract done in the name of the Donald J. Trump Foundation, as opposed to Donald J. Trump or services rendered.
Thank you. Any other abuses of the foundation that you'd like to share? Again, it is against the law, and again, extremely unfair to charities that are playing by the rules.
Not at this time, but I think of one.
Okay.
Absolutely.
And then for the balance of my time, would you agree that someone could deny rental units to African Americans, lead the birther movement, refer to the diaspora as shithole countries, and refer to white supremacists as fine people, have a black friend, and still be racist?
Yes.
I agree.
Young lady's time is expired. You may answer the question.
I did, yes.
Mr. Chairman, I have two unanimous consent. Since we're finishing up, before we get done, I want to go ahead.
Okay, just give me 1 second. I just want
Yes,
to.
sir.
I wanted to get to Mr. Salih, and then I'll come to you. Okay, Mr. Salih, they've been waiting all day. Mr. Salih.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, all of you, for centering this committee on our sole purpose is exposing the truth. And some of my colleagues can't handle the truth, and this is unfortunate because it's the center of what is protecting our country right now. The people at home are frustrated, Mr. Cohen, and they want criminal schemes to stop, especially those from the Oval Office. Mr. Cohen, I am upset and know that my residents feel the same way, that a man you worked for the past 10 years is using the most powerful position in the world to hurt our country solely for personal gain. We are upset that some of our colleagues here are so disconnected of what it means to have this president of the United States sending checks to cover bribe payments, not hush payments, bribe payments you made on his behalf. One in 2017 of March, and another August 2017 after he was sworn in as president. They are upset that while my colleagues are trying to discredit your testimony by some of your own unlawful acts and lies, that they are disconnected with the fact that you were the personal lawyer for this president of the United States, that this president chose you as his legal counsel. My stance has always been the same, Mr. Chairman, based on the facts, not on future reports that we're all waiting on. My residents back home don't need a collusion cause with a foreign government to know this president, individual one, has disregarded the law of the land, the United States Constitution, and that he has misused his pardon powers. In the sentencing memo, Mr. Cohen, filed by the federal prosecutors in New York in December of last year, they stated, quote, in particular, and as Cohen himself has now admitted with respect to both payments, he acted in coordination with and at the direction of individual one. Mr. Cohen, as you know, President Donald J. Trump brand comes first, not the American people. Based on what you know now, based on what we know now, is that individual one used his money, businesses, and platform to enrich himself, his brand, and then the process directed you, Mr. Cohen, to commit multiple felonies, and you covered it up, correct?
That's correct.
You called it protecting his brand, correct?
And him as well.
Mr. Cohen, with this, do you think the President of the United States is making decisions in the best interests of the American people?
No, I don't.
Especially those you said that he used horrible words about, like African Americans, Muslim Americans, and immigrants?
Yes.
Just to make a note, Mr. Chairman, just because someone has a person of color, a black person working for them, does not mean they aren't racist. And it is insensitive that some would even say, it's the fact that someone would actually use a prop, a black woman, in this chamber, in this committee, is alone racist in itself. Donald Trump is setting a
Mr.
precedent.
Chairman, I ask that our words
Donald
be
Trump
taken
is setting a
down.
precedent. I reclaim my time.
Mr.
Donald Trump
Chairman.
is setting a precedent
Mr.
that
Chairman.
the highest office can be
Mr.
obtained
Chairman, the rules
legal
are clear.
activity. Cover up and hold on to business assets to break campaign finance laws and constitutional clauses. What we have here, Mr. Chairman, is criminal conduct and the pursuit of the highest public office by Mr. Cohen and individual one. I hope that the gravity of this situation hits everyone in this body and in Congress and across this country. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield the rest of my time.
Mr. Chairman, I ask that her words, when she's referring to an individual member of this body, be taken down and stricken from the record. I'm sure she didn't intend to do this, but if anyone knows my record as it relates, it should be you, Mr. Chairman.
Chairman, I would like to.
Hold on.
I want the words read back.
No.
We want to know exactly what she
Excuse
said
me.
about the colleague.
Excuse me. Would you like to rephrase that statement, Mr. Lee?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I can actually read it from here. Just to make a note, Mr. Chairman, that just because someone has a person of color, a black person working for them, does not mean they are racist. And it is insensitive that someone would even say racist, say it is racist in itself, and to use a black woman as a prop to prove it otherwise. And I can submit this for the record. If a colleague is thinking that that's what I'm saying, I'm just saying that's what I believe to have happened. And if, as a person of color in this committee, that's how I felt at that moment, and I wanted to express that. But I am not calling the gentleman, Mr. Meadows, a racist for doing so. I'm saying that in itself, it is a racist act.
Well, I hope not, Mr. Chairman, because I need to be clear on this particular. Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Meadows, wait a minute.
I've defended you about
Mr. Meadows,
with false accusations.
Mr. Meadows, I'm the chair.
Yes, sir, you are.
Thank you.
Right.
I will clear this up. Now, Ms. Tlaib, I want to make sure I understand. You were not intending to call Mr. Meadows a racist, is that right?
No, Mr. Chairman, I do not call Mr. Meadows a racist.
No.
I am trying,
Wait a minute, hold
as a
on.
person of color, Mr. Chairman, just to express myself and how I felt at that moment. And so, just for the record, that's what was my intention.
All right. Yeah. Mr. Meadows. Mr. Meadows.
Mr. Chairman, there's nothing more personal to me than my relationship. My nieces and nephews are people of color. Not many people know that. You know that, Mr. Chairman. And to indicate that I asked someone who is a personal friend of the Trump family, who has worked for him, who knows this particular individual, that she's coming in to be a prop, it's racist to suggest that I asked her to come in here for that reason. Mr. President, the president's own person. She's a family member, and she loves this family. She came in because she felt like the President of the United States was getting falsely accused. And Mr. Chairman, you and I have a personal relationship that's not based on color. And to even go down this direction is wrong, Mr. Chairman.
First of all, I want to thank the gentleman for what you have stated. If there's anyone who is sensitive with regard to race, it's me. Son of former sharecroppers, they were basically slaves. So I get it. I listened very carefully to Ms. Tully, and I think, and I don't want to, I'm not going to put words in her mouth, but I think she said that she was not calling you a racist. And I thought that we could clarify that, because you, Mr. Meadows, you know, and of all the people on this committee, I've said it and got in trouble for it, that you're one of my best friends. I know that shocks a lot of people.
And likewise, Mr. Chairman.
But you are. And I would do, and I could see and feel your pain. I feel it. And so, and I don't think Ms. Salih intended to cause you that kind of pain and that kind of frustration. Did you have a statement, Ms. Salih? I'm going to yield to you. Will
No,
you just
thank you,
straighten this
Mr.
up?
Chairman, and to my colleague, Mr. Meadows, that was not my intention, and I do apologize if that's what it sounded like, but I said someone in general. And as everybody knows in this chamber, I'm pretty direct, so if I wanted to say that, I would have, but that's not what I said. And thank you, Mr. Chairman, for allowing me to clarify. But again, I said someone. And again, I was not referring to you at all as a racist.
Well, I thank the gentlewoman for her comments. I thank the chairman for working to clarify this, and I appreciate the chairman's intervening.
Now, to the gentleman, first of all, thank you for allowing us to resolve that. The gentleman had asked a little bit earlier.
I will withdraw my request.
Oh, you don't want to do the unanimous consent?
I need the unanimous consent. I think I need to officially withdraw my request that it be stricken
Go
from.
on, withdraw it. You did it?
I did.
All right, sounds good. Now, I will recognize you for your unanimous consent. I think you want to put in the record some documents.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I ask unanimous consent that we put forth in the record the Vanity Fair article, which indicates that Michael Cohen must be the most gifted consultant in America, outlining his insights into government, healthcare, and policy and real estate, suggesting that it's not a real company, but and just like he's not a lawyer.
Without objection, so ordered.
Thank you. I ask unanimous consent that the LA Times article of July 16, 2018 actually be put in the record, which outlines the $1.2 million payment and their misgivings thereafter.
Without objection, so ordered. Any other unanimous consent requests? Zeiss.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I ask unanimous consent to make the February 9th, 2019 Washington Post profile of Michael Cohen, titled Michael Cohen's Secret Agenda, part of the record. This story shows Cohen to be a selfish manipulator who is all about himself. It even has a false anecdote about how he once claimed to deliver his own son, his own baby.
Without objection, so ordered.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I ask unanimous consent to make the May 9th, 2018 Washington Post article, South Korean firm paid Michael Cohen $150,000 as it sought contract from U.S. government as part of the record. The article reported Korea Aerospace Industries paid a shell company run by Cohen.
Without objection, so ordered.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I ask unanimous consent to make Michael Cohen's sentencing statement to the Southern District of New York part of the record. The statement establishes that Michael Cohen continues to falsely blame his crimes on blind loyalty to the president, but only Cohen is to blame for his many false statements to financial institutions and the IRS.
Without objection, so ordered.
I ask unanimous consent to make the August 20th, 2018 CNN article, Fed scrutinizing Michael Cohen's former accountant and bank loans, part of the record. Cohen's accountant was subpoenaed to appear before a grand jury and required a lawyer. In his sentencing memo, prosecutors said Cohen attempted to blame his tax evasion on his accountant.
Without objection, so ordered.
Two more, real quickly.
Sure.
Ask unanimous consent to make the February 26, 2019 order filed by the Appellate Division of the State of New York regarding disciplinary proceedings against Michael Cohen, part of the record. This order, which proactively applies starting February 28th, establishes Cohen committed a serious crime and ceased being an attorney when he was convicted of lying to Congress.
Without objection, so ordered.
And finally, Mr. Chairman, I ask unanimous consent to make the July 26, 2018 Washington Post article, Michael Cohen secretly recorded Trump. Does that make him a bad lawyer? Part of the record. The article describes potential ethical violations of a lawyer, Cohen, recording his client, Trump, without the client's knowledge.
Without objection, so ordered. Mr. Norman.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I ask unanimous consent to make the January 18, 2019 Huffington Post article 11 tweets from the fake fan account, Stud, Michael Cohen paid to fawn over him, part of the record. The account is described as a place for women who love and support Michaul Cohen. Strong pit bull, sex symbol, no nonsense, business oriented, ready to make a move.
Without objection, so ordered. Mr. Roy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would ask unanimous consent to make the April 20th, 2018 article in Mother Jones titled Michael Cohen Says He's Never Been to Prague. He Told Me a Different Story, part of the record.
Without objection, so ordered.
Thanks, sir.
Yeah. Very well. Scott, I have some concluding remarks. But before I do that, do you have anything you'd like to say?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I would. I have some closing remarks I would like to say myself. Is this an appropriate time?
You can do it now.
Thank you. So first I want to thank you, Chairman, because I appreciate the opportunity to share some final thoughts. I've acknowledged I have made my own mistakes, and I have owned up to them publicly and under oath. But silence and complicity in the face of the daily destruction of our basic norms and civility to one another will not be one of them. I did things and I acted improperly, at times at Mr. Trump's behest. I blindly followed his demands. My loyalty to Mr. Trump has cost me everything. My family's happiness, friendships, my law license, my company, my livelihood, my honor, my reputation, and soon my freedom. And I will not sit back, say nothing, and allow him to do the same to the country. Indeed, given my experience working for Mr. Trump, I fear that if he loses the election in 2020, that there will never be a peaceful transition of power. And this is why I agreed to appear before you today. In closing, I'd like to say directly to the President, we honor our veterans even in the rain. You tell the truth even when it doesn't aggrandize you. You respect the law and our incredible law enforcement agents. You don't villainize them. You don't disparage generals, Gold Star families, prisoners of war, and other heroes who had the courage to fight for this country. You don't attack the media and those who question what you don't like or what you don't want them to say. And you take responsibility for your own dirty deeds. You don't use your power of your bully pulpit to destroy the credibility of those who speak out against you. You don't separate families from one another or demonize those looking to America for a better life. You don't vilify people based on the God they pray to and you don't cuddle up to our adversaries at the expense of our allies. And finally, you don't shut down the government before Christmas and New Year's just to simply appease your base. This behavior is churlish, it denigrates the office of the president, and it's simply un-American. And it's not you. So to those who support the president and his rhetoric, as I once did, I pray the country doesn't make the same mistakes that I have made, or pay the heavy price that my family and I are paying. And I thank you very much for this additional time, Chairman.
Thank you very much. The ranking member has closed the statement.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We know Mr. Cohen has been dishonest in the past. That's why he's gone to prison in 2 months. But there are things today that he said during the several hours of questioning that just don't add up either. He said he never defrauded any bank. He was having a conversation questioning from Mr. Comer. Obviously that's not true because he's gone to prison for that very offense. He said today he was a good lawyer who understood the need to represent his client with legal advice. But in his written testimony, he said he never bothered to consider whether payments to women were improper, much less the right thing to do. He attested in his signed truth and testimony form that he did not have any reportable contracts with foreign government entities. Earlier, he admitted to having consulting agreements with at least 2 foreign entities owned in part by foreign governments, BTA Bank of Kazakhstan and Korea Aerospace Industries of South Korea. He said to Chairman Cummings that Donald Trump directed him and the Trump Organization CFO Alan Weisselberg to, quote, go back to his office and figure out how to make a $130,000 payment. But in his testimony, he says, Mr. Trump directed me to use my own personal funds from the home equity line of credit to avoid any money being traced back to him that could negatively impact the campaign. And in response to a question about him paying to set up the fake Twitter account at Women for Cohen, that he didn't direct the commission of that Twitter account. He says, I didn't set that up, and it was done by a young lady that works for the firm, when in fact, he did ask the IT firm Red Finch to set it up, according to the owner of Red Finch. And finally, he said he didn't want a job with the administration, even though the attorneys with the Southern District of New York stated that this was a fact. When asked about this, they said, I wouldn't call them liars, but that statement is not accurate. Mr. Chairman, I think maybe more importantly is what we should have been doing today. Mr. Meadows and I sent you a letter asking you to have Mr. Rosenstein here. I think it's important to know that last week when you announced that Mr. Cohen was coming this week, just happened to be the very same week that we learned the Deputy Attorney General of the United States was thinking about wearing a wire to record the Commander-in-Chief, was actually contemplating talking to cabinet members and invoking the 25th Amendment. That's what we should be focused on, not this sad display we've had to go through the last several hours. Again, it's not my words. You can take the words of the former General Counsel for the House of Representatives under Tip O'Neill. So I hope we've learned some things here today. But Mr. Chairman, as I said earlier, your first big hearing, the first announced witness of the 116th Congress, is a gentleman who is going to prison in 2 months for lying to Congress. I don't think that's what we should be focused on. Yield back.
Thank you very much. You know, I've sat here and I've listened to all of this, and it's very painful. It's very painful. You made a lot of mistakes, Mr. Cohen, and you've admitted that. And you know, one of the saddest parts of this whole thing is that some very innocent people are hurting too. And you acknowledge that. And that's your family. And so you come here today and I deep in my heart, after, you know, and when I practice law, I represent a lot of lawyers who who got in trouble. And you come saying I had made my mistakes, but now I want to change my life. And you know, if we as a nation did not give people an opportunity after they made mistakes to change their lives, a whole lot of people would not do very well. I don't know where you go from here. As I sat here and I listened to both sides, I just felt as if, and you know, people are now using my words that they took from me, that didn't give me any credit. We're better than this. We are so much, we really are. As a country, we are so much better than this. And, you know, I told you, and for some reason, Mr. Cohen, I tell my children, I say, when bad things happen to you, do not ask the question, why did it happen to me? Ask the question, why did it happen for me? I don't know why this is happening for you, but it is my hope that a small part of it is for our country to be better. If I hear you correctly, it sounds like you're crying out for a new normal, for us getting back to normal. It sounds to me like you want to make sure that our democracy stays intact. When the one meeting I had with President Trump, I said to him, the greatest gift that you and I, Mr. President, can give to our children is making sure that we give them a democracy that is intact. A democracy better than the one that we came upon. And I'm hoping that the things you said today will help us begin to get back there. You know, I mean, come on now. I mean, when you got, according to the Washington Post, our president has made at least 8,718 false or misleading statements. That's stunning. That's not what we teach our children. I don't teach mine that. And for whatever reason, you sound like you got caught up in it. You got caught up in it. You got caught up in it. And some kind of way, I hope that you will, I know that it's painful going to prison. I know it's got to be painful being called a rat. And let me explain. A lot of people don't know the significance of that, but I live in the inner city of Baltimore. All right? And when you call somebody a rat, that's one of the worst things you could call them, because when they go to prison, that means a cinch. I'm just saying. And so, the president called you a rat. We're better than that. We really are. And I'm hoping that all of us can get back to this democracy that we want and that we should be passing on to our children so that they can do better than what we did. So you wonder whether people believe you. I don't know. I don't know whether they believe you. But the fact is that you come, you have your head down, and this has got to be one of the hardest things that you could do. Let me tell you the picture that really, really pained me. You were leaving the prison, you were leaving the courthouse, and I guess it's your daughter had braces or something on. Man, that thing hurt me. As a father of two daughters, it hurt me. And I can imagine how it must feel for you. But I'm I'm just saying to you, I want to first of all thank you. I know that this has been hard. I know that you face a lot. I know that you are worried about your family. But this is a part of your destiny. And hopefully, this portion of your destiny will lead to a better Michael Cohen, a better Donald Trump, a better United States of America, and a better world. And I mean that from the depths of my heart. When we're dancing with the angels, the question will be asked, in 2019, what did we do to make sure we kept our democracy intact? Did we stand on the sidelines and say nothing? Did we play games? And I'm tired of these statements saying, people come in here and say, oh, this is the first hearing. It is not the first hearing. The first hearing was with regard to prescription drugs. Remember, a little girl, a lady said there, Miss Wortham, her daughter died because she could not get $333 a month in insulin. That was our first hearing. Second hearing, H.R. 1, voting rights, corruption in government. Come on now. We can do more than one thing. And we have got to get back to normal. With that, this meeting is adjourned.
And that was the end of the day's hearing proceedings that you have been watching. I don't know if you have been watching all 6 clips that I have, but I do appreciate it if you have been. It's a lot to take in for sure. I was just interested to see how they work. That was the first time I've ever seen something all the way through. I just thought it might be interesting to put it on here to get a better sense of how everyone else has who may have seen these things before and can compare them to what this one was like, those who may be new to it like I am. I did look up something quickly to try to answer questions that maybe others have. The question occurred to me, how do the people who are part of the committees get chosen to be in the committee? How did they come? Is that something where you just volunteer for it? I think a little bit is involved with that. From what I found out, each party, the Republican has a conference. That's what it's called, to the best of my knowledge. Democrats have their own Democratic caucus, in which members are selected. So it's just a 2-step process for the members and also the chairman. So Elijah Cummings, he was the chairman, and since there's more Democrats in Congress than Republicans, he's now known as the chairman of the entire committee. That's the ruling party at that particular time the hearing takes place. The Democratic caucus not only chooses the chairman, they also choose the members. So I would imagine it's a process where those who may wish to be part of it or show interest will then, I guess, they get together and they decide based upon whatever criteria it is. I'm not sure exactly how that works, but that's pretty much where it comes from. Republicans are the same way, both for the quote unquote chairman and also for the members. The only difference is the chairman being with the minority party in terms of the numbers in Congress, they don't actually control the proceedings. So you may have seen Representative Jordan being the one that spoke most often. He was actually the, for lack of a better way of putting it, the chairman of the Republican conference. The Republican members that were part of the committee, he was pretty much voted by his own Republican Party to be the chairman of this committee. So that hopefully, if that is something that you might have been wondering, that helps to clear that up in terms of how members are selected in general, and then why how the chairmans get to be so. I was thinking it might have been tenure in terms of who's been with them. I'm assuming that the tenure helps in terms of the feeling that each party can actually place that person in the chairman's position, so they can actually draw from previous experience in hearings. So it gives them like a more sense of being capable of presenting the Democratic side of things, or I'm sorry, yeah, the Democratic side of things, the Republican perspective. They put those guys or women, as it may be now, in terms of chairman members. The thoughts I had, again, I'm going to try to keep these as neutral as possible. The comments overall, I guess I'm not surprised, but it's one thing to know that it goes on, another thing to actually see it. Because like I said, I've never seen an entire hearing for for any particular purpose, seen an entire day's hearing. The stark differences in why each political party is there. I mean, it doesn't take too much to understand that with the president being Republican, every Republican seems to do everything they can to damage the credibility, to flat out deny the hearing from taking place, at least postponing it as they could. And then on the Democrat side, just as steadfast to make sure that hearing took place, make sure that they were complimentary of, or at least not complimentary so much as showing statements that show gratitude for Michael Cohen being there. It was just so starkly different. It doesn't help, in my opinion, for their. I'm surprised anything ever gets done. I'm shocked, given if that's the way it is in terms of every issue that comes up. I'm shocked anything ever gets done. I just don't get how that actually helps. We need, as citizens, we need highways fixed. I don't know where you are, but the chances are your highways have too many potholes in it. You like to have streets repaired. If you're especially like in the parts of the country where there's harsh winters, potholes show up left and right. You want to have, me personally, I want to have better lit streets at night. It's so hard to see at night for those who may be out driving at night. I don't know if it's like that. I imagine it's just the budget crunch overall. So cities have to decide how they're going to allocate the money that they have from taxes, or whether it be from money they get from the state government or federal government, as the case may be. I don't see how anything gets passed to approve anything the way they are just so opposite of their agendas, so to speak. And it's just it's just it's just, I guess, crazy. It's to me it's kind of depressing to see it going on. I like I said, my first time, so I imagine it's just par for the course to a great extent. But I don't know if I could ever be a part of Congress, because just my own personal nature. If I believe in something strong enough, it's going to be hard for me to compromise. And that's pretty much what it comes down to. You compromise, you really want this, but you let this go, or you accept something else that the other side wants so you can get your part through. And then you have lobbyists that come in who want their own businesses that they represent. They want their interests served. So now you have that thrown into it, and making like ordinary people feel even more left out of the process. It's just a interesting, like I said, it can be depressing at times, and kind of disheartening in terms of how the whole political process works. But I wanted to keep the comments brief, because I know you watched a whole lot, and I don't want to take up too much more time. I definitely thank you for those that watched. If you watched all of them, thank you so much. If you watched just one of them, thank you. It happens to be this one. I tried to speak as little as possible, because I just wanted to stay free from framing anything towards a liberal view or towards a conservative view. I just wanted to show what I thought from both, and then I gave some comments briefly on each side's agenda, which hopefully just, again, like spurs conversation that you can share in your comments down below and try to be as civil as possible. I think hopefully this will be the one place you could come to say what you think and not feel like someone's going to attack you because they think you attack them. Hopefully it's just a question of you can state what you feel like stating and someone else can state what they feel like stating, and then you just maybe come to an understanding. Maybe, like I said, maybe it's that first seed that's planted that goes a long way towards changing a person's mind or viewpoints, if only just a little. So let me know what you think. Press the like and subscribe buttons, and I'll try to get some other videos up. I'm not sure if I'll delve too much into politics. I'm mostly a sports person, so that tends to be where most of my content and my opinions will stem from. But anything, I think I do have varied interest in terms of generating an opinion on something. Some things are political, some things are sports, some things are entertainment of different types, just like everyday life, I guess. So I'll post things as I think I have something important to say and to show people. I will do that. And again, I appreciate your time, and you all treat each other with respect and be good to each other.